Now I know that DFID and the Consortium have worked closely over the years, and we really do value strong and constructive and open, honest relationship that we have. It is incredibly valuable for DFID to be able to work with and meet the Consortium as a collective, because you represent really diverse organisations, range of opinions, different standpoints, and that's really helpful rather than meeting a number of separate organisations and individuals, because the Consortium actually facilitates real and almost unprecedented access to DFID, and that has benefits for all of us. And one of my objectives today, and really why I've come here today, is to emphasise the UK's continued commitment to HIV. I want to make that very, very clear. I am proud of DFID's leadership over the years, and I am firmly committed to maintaining it. As you will know from DFID's position paper, Towards Zero Infections, which was published last year, we remain committed to the goal of universal access by 2015. We support the vision of getting to zero infection, zero new infections, zero discrimination, and zero AIDS-related deaths. And recent advancements in treatment and prevention make this ever more possible. But there is still much to do. And DFID in particular is working to deliver a step change in prevention, a reduction in treatment costs and scale up of access to diagnosis, treatment, care and support, political action on stigma and discrimination, particularly to reach key populations, and a human rights approach to knowing your epidemic, knowing your response. And to achieve this, DFID is working in fewer countries, focusing HIV-specific support where it is most needed, and working through partners elsewhere where we're not working ourselves. Our bilateral support is focused on prevention, key population and integrated services. Our multilateral engagement is driving results for HIV and TB, and we remain a voice for key populations internationally. And our work with civil society includes achieving policy change and combating stigma and discrimination in concentrated epidemics. The issue of faith was raised. Well, faith-based organisations do have particular potential to shape social norms that influence people's behaviour and attitudes towards people living with HIV. And those that foster respect and support effective responses to the epidemic should be supported. And DFID's Faith Partnerships paper sets out the principles which we seek to work with faith-based organisations. I mean, I think this is a really important and interesting area, because clearly faith-based organisations are tremendously powerful across the world, in Africa in particular, but throughout the world, and have the support and trust of so many of the communities that we have to find a way to work together around those principles so that we can address, I think as you said, that we all share, was it you or you said? One of you said that we all, all of us don't want people to die, and that's something we can unify around, whereas there are obviously contested areas around condoms, abortion, homosexuality, and they are going to be ongoing, but the absolute push and energy that we must have is to get around whatever obstacles or contested areas there are, because it's such an important agenda. And the role of DFID and its partners in challenging stigma, discrimination and criminalisation is what I want to focus really the rest of my remarks on. These are the biggest barriers faced by key populations to access the prevention, treatment, care and support services they need. And we know that outside Africa, the epidemic is increasingly driven amongst key populations. And they include sex workers, injecting drug users, men who have sex with men, transgender people and prisoners. But we do also see increased infections amongst vulnerable groups in Africa. For example, in Kenya, they account for 30% of the new infections. And yet policies and programs and resources for these groups are grossly inadequate. For example, in 2009, only 18% of countries globally had established HIV prevention goals for reaching men who have sex with men. So the world must work harder to empower these groups whose life circumstances place them at increased risk of HIV. And there are so many examples I could draw on to demonstrate how DFID is supporting this through dedicated partners. I'm going to mention a few. The global network of people living with HIV have been conducting policy research in South Africa on the criminalisation of LGBTI. The International HIV Alliance are running a campaign, What's Preventing Prevention, to promote LGBT rights. The Global Forum for Men Who Have Sex with Men are engaging in international policy dialogue to promote laws, regulations and policies that improve HIV prevention programs for MSM. And the Minister of State, Alan Duncan, announced in July new DFID resources for the Robert Carr Fund to support global and regional networks to improve HIV responses reaching key populations. Anyway, what is critical in all our support is the need to build the capacity of local civil society organisations to empower those most at risk from HIV, to understand and to advocate for their rights. Because it's scary, all of the activists I met were, in fear of their lives in some countries. This is no mean thing to be asked to do, to stand up for rights. And in countries I met in India. I was meeting with gay rights activists. One of the men said to me, well, it's okay so long as you get married. And it's a kind of accepted but non-accepted. And in the end, I pointed to actually, the Stonewall riots and said, there comes a point. But it is a tough call. But advocate for their rights from within a community is absolutely vital, because without grassroots support for people to hold governments to account, we're not going to get sustained change. In parallel, the UK government complements grassroots demand for change through our diplomacy and human rights overseas. We are committed to ending religious intolerance and persecution and discrimination against individuals on the basis of their sexuality. We regularly review the commitment to and respect for all human rights in other countries, including the likely direction of travel over the coming years. Wherever we have specific concerns about a government's failure to protect its citizens' rights, we raise these directly at the highest levels of the government concerned. I myself was in Uganda and raised the issue of the anti-homosexuality bill. I mean, these are very difficult issues, but I've always taken the attitude, because there are those who think sometimes you shouldn't raise, and we have sometimes raising things quietly is better than raising them noisily. But raise them, I do think we must. And I think to raise them and accept that you have different views to the host government is better than not raising them and trying to find a way forward. You can come from extremely different positions and find a way through. I know, because I'm in the coalition. There's always a way. It is the sad truth of the HIV epidemic that it is often the people most at risk of human rights abuses in developing countries that are least able to get the right prevention, the right treatment, care and support and services that they need. And if we are to meet the UNAIDS vision of zero new infections, zero discrimination, zero AIDS-related deaths, then addressing this is an absolute priority. And I'm very, very pleased to have been able to come here today to listen to Jessie and today incredibly impressive contributions and interventions. And I thank you all, and I look forward to working with you all here on Lynne. Thank you.